I show up with a boombox and I'm gonna start playing old country songs. It couldn't have gotten weirder.
Yeah, the joke's there. Just because you're crying on the phone to me, they're not. Those tears aren't that valuable. I never thought I'd hear Kanye West singing flower shops, but I have.
That's good.
Being an Opry Next Stage artist.
Bragger. Nobody likes a bragger.
Nobody likes a bragger. Hey, easy. But it's actually really cool, and the program itself of just providing a little bit of an extra spotlight to a group of people that they deign worthy, and it's an honor because it's given me access to play the Opry a couple more times and do Opry things, have this conversation with you, and if anything, maybe there's one of these nights where I'm out there playing and there's a kid like me out there that's his epiphany, and it changes the course of his life like the Opry did for me, for sure. And so to have a group of people that are going to get to go through this journey together and see where we are, if it's like our class, whatever our class is.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be cool to look up in 30 or 40 years and see where we're standing, and knowing that it all started kind of here with this getting tagged like a prospect if we're athletes, get the recruits, if you will.
Well, I can tell you as an older dude, not knowing how it's going to turn out is awesome.
Yeah.
If you knew how the book was going to end, you'd probably never read it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always kind of experienced my life. I said, I'm just going to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And I don't ever know who's going to call.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. What Yogi Berra say? If you get to a fork in the road, take it.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
But
that's exactly it.
I try to be what all those people had been for me.
Yes.
35 years ago, when I was out there, little Jimmy would be on the side of the stage, Porter would be on the side of the stage, and Bill Monroe would be out there, and the camaraderie that went on. And now I've learned from that, and I try to be that, in whatever way. If somebody's out there making their first appearance, I'm always over there on the side saying, hey, welcome.
That's so cool.
And look forward to having you back. And because it's so simple because they all did that for me.
Yeah. Well, the pay it forward thing is, I look forward to do that. I want to be that for somebody and several people. And overall, just super grateful that the Grand Ole Opry exists.
Yeah.
And whatever little piece I am right now, I'm happy to be there. Speaking of pedal steel, Russ Hicks.
Yeah.
Okay. His daughter played basketball for my dad at Lipscomb. And when I was just getting into, I think I'd gotten a banjo for Christmas my 3rd grade year or whatever, and I was really into bluegrass and like Flat and Scruggs and all that. And Russ saw me take an interest, and he was like, come with me to the Grand Ole Opry. And so my first experience at the Grand Ole Opry was doing the backstage thing and watching her. So I remember the catering room and standing side stage, and like during set changes or something, he was like, come out and stand. I got to stand on the circle as a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the Opry House and just like, it sounds so cliche, but I really was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And then the next time I stood in the circle was my debut 20 years later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I knew Russ.
Yeah.
And it was my story of the first time getting to play there is pretty hysterical. I had always dreamed of it, like anybody that plays and sings a little bit of country music. That's the mecca, And so I'd moved here in '83. I actually played the Opry stage, but not as an Opry show. Bill Monroe did a thing every year during the DJ convention or something, and the band I was in got to play on a show that Bill did on the Opry stage. That would have been 1975. And then all these years later, I moved to Nashville in '83, and I'd get invited with friends, say, hey, come out and sing harmony with me. And I said, man, with all due respect, the first time I play that stage, I'd really like it to be as me, selfishly. And
that's fair.
And so a bunch of years had gone by and I never had the opportunity. And then my oldest daughter, Jenny, was going to be in the first grade talent show at Grassland Elementary School in Franklin. And she said, "Hey, I want to be in the talent show. Will you teach me a song?" I said, "Of course." So I taught her "You Are My Sunshine." And we practiced and went to all the rehearsals. And so the talent show was on that Saturday night. And Tal Durham was the general manager at the time. And he called and he said, "We've been watching your career and we kind of like what you do. And we'd like to invite you to play the Opry." And I said, "Man, I've dreamed of this call my whole life." I said, "When?" And they said, "Well, Saturday night."
Obviously.
And I said, "This Saturday night?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I wish I could make it, but I'm booked at the Grassland Elementary School." and so good dad move, right? So they invited me, sometime later, and I got to go out there and play. And the cool thing was when Jenny got married, we were trying to figure out what would be a good father-daughter dance song. "You Are My Sunshine." Gotta be. And
that's great.
Yeah, but it's a special place, because I played some bluegrass and you had an interest in it too. The history of that place really goes back to more of that string band music than country music in per se. The first Opry show they ever did was a fiddler named Jimmy Thompson. Just went in a hotel room down in downtown Nashville and played fiddle tunes for a while, and that was the first ever broadcast of the Opry. It wasn't even called the Opry then, but and then what was really unique about it was WSM was an insurance company, and it stood for We Shield Millions. And the whole purpose of them putting music on the radio was they were trying to appeal to rural people to sell them insurance.
Yeah.
Wow. It wasn't so much about this purity of country. All that. It was still a little bit of business.
Yeah, sure.
So what do they like? They said, well, they like that fiddle and banjo stuff, So that's why it kind of started the way it did. But, it's almost 100 years old now.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always put the Opry on a pedestal since maybe since before that night, but definitely since that night. And I've always aimed at getting to play that stage. And when I got that phone call too, when Flower Shops was a moment, I just was kind of shocked and a tear rolled down my face. All those feelings happened, and it was like a warm pat on the back that I wasn't crazy for trying to still make country music, and there's a home for it. Yeah. Yeah,
I found that so many of my relationships out there with people like Little Jimmy Dickens and Porter and we watched them all on TV when we were kids, me and my dad, and so much of that is out of my father's love and mother's love for this music, and I didn't know a whole lot of this stuff, but I'll tell you a great story about Little Jimmy Dickens.
Great Christmas lights, by the way.
Little
Jimmy Dickens every year. Yeah.
And he was around, and I remember one weekend, me and my dad used to sing The Bird of Paradise all the time when I was a little boy. So one night, Jimmy and I got to be good friends, and I said, "Can I come out and sing harmony with you on Bird of Paradise?" He said, "Sure, kid." I went out. And my old man called the next day, and he said, "Well, you finally made it. You sang Bird of Paradise with Tater on the Opry," and that was a pretty neat moment. But anyway, my dad came to see me at the Opry one weekend, and he really wanted to meet Jimmy. And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, we can do that." And went down and introduced my dad to Little Jimmy Dickens, and asked Jimmy, he said, "Do you know where I could find a copy of Country Boy, Plain Old Country Boy, one of your hits?" And Jimmy said, he said, "I can't find it anywhere." Jimmy said, "Well, give me your address and I'll just send you one." So he sent him a copy of Country Boy, and I paid attention to all this, and I didn't know why, but anyway, fast forward a few years later, my father passes, and it was just such a what kind of show.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because I was popular, I was going through a divorce, my father died, and we're all up there, and the cameras are everywhere trying to get this and get that, and it was a real mess. And so my dad's girlfriend at the time had have a Catholic presence at the service, And I said, well, okay, do whatever you need to do. And the guy in the big hat, and comes out and shakes the smoke and does all this stuff. And then I show up with a boombox, and I'm going to start playing old country songs. It couldn't have gotten weirder.
The joke's there.
So I pushed play and played Plain Old Country Boy. And my dad's brother was there. And after I played Country Boy, I said, well, my father's brother's here. He'd come out and talk about my dad and this and that. And his eyes were like, and he said to me, he said, why did you play that song? I said, well, I knew Dad liked it. And da-da-da. He said, no, you don't understand. When we were little boys, that's the first record we ever got as kids. And so there's all that stuff that's all in there, a part of it. And that's why I love it so much, is I love the reverence that I have for all those that came before me, and try to keep that alive. And
Amen.
I keep my dressing room door open like Mr. Acuff did. And we were out there one night, and Acuff always kept his dressing room door. Everybody was welcome, and people would come in. We'd have jam sessions, and it was just the best hang. And he'd tell stories and whatnot. One guy came in one time and asked him for his autograph. And sure, I'll sign that for you. And he signed it. The guy said to him, boy, bet you wish you had $1 for every one of those you signed. He goes, I do.
I do. Yeah, he does.
Handed it back to him.
That's good.
But it's just there's a spirit out there that you can't explain, and it's hip, it's cooler, it's hipper, it's more meaningful than all your hit songs. It's different than just the music, and I just adore those people out there.
Yeah. Special place, special feeling. And, I owe a lot to my grandparents too, because they put me on hee-haw as a young kid. So I had a little bit of I got to skip a little bit of a generation in what I was consuming.
Sure.
Grew up a little older than I was. And obviously grew up on you. And when it comes to singing and harmonies and stuff, I mean, harmonies, my mom's not much of a singer, but she had me singing harmonies to the Chuck Wagon Gang. And
That's cool.
I was 10 years old singing harmonies to all that. Yeah, man, I think also being a Nashville native, maybe not being in the shadow of the Grand Ole Opry, but it always being around and getting to represent Nashville truly through the Opry.
It's really rare to find a native of Nashville in this business. Amy's a Nashville native, my wife Amy, and you, and it just doesn't happen very often. This is more of a transient place where people go to and travel to and all of that. I did. Most everybody I know.
Where are you from?
Oklahoma. Don't hold it against me.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Did you know Did you know Haggard?
Mm-hmm. I got to sing harmony with him on some of his very last recordings.
Man.
And I'll tell you a good Haggard story.
Please.
I was telling you about Jimmy and when my dad passed. Oh, anyway, after that, there was a guitar player that played with Jimmy named Jabbo Arrington. And he had a great old Broadcaster Fender guitar with the first year that they made Fender solid body guitars from 1950, and they're really sought after. And anyway, this guy played with Jimmy. He was his first lead guitar player named Jabbo, and his family contacted me and said, "We see you play a guitar like our relative Jabbo played with Jimmy. Would you be interested in buying it?" And I said, "Absolutely." So they came to the Opry and I bought that guitar from them. And when I bought it, they said, "Our real dream is to see it played on the Opry one more time." I said, "Well, I can make that happen, I think." And I went to Jimmy and I said, "Hey, can I come play with you?" And he said, "How come?" I said, "Well, I just bought Jabbo's guitar." And he said, "I want that guitar." And I told him what I paid for it, and he goes, I don't want that guitar. I don't want that guitar anymore. And so I went out and played with him. The family's over there all crying. It was beautiful and really neat moment. And then when Jimmy passed, they asked me to come sing Go Rest High. And I said, well, I know what I got to do. So I took Jabbo's guitar out there and played Go Rest High at his service. And told everybody, I said, what you don't know is this guitar was owned by a man named Jabbo who played with Jimmy when he first came here. So I thought the guitar that brought him here ought to be the guitar that takes him out of here. God. This killer story, killer moment, everything. And, it's just a beautiful moment. I get home and the phone rings and it's Haggard. He said, "Hey, son, it's Merle." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, I can't believe what I just saw. He said, "That might be the greatest thing I've ever seen, what you just did." He said, I love that man. I love Jimmy so much. And what you just did, he says, I can't quit crying. He says, I don't cry. You understand me? I don't cry. And he just said, it was so neat, because I really adored him. And he said, I want that guitar. I said, well, you can't have it.
just because you're crying on the phone to me. They're not, those tears aren't that valuable.
But, me and Paul getting to do that record while he was still alive, and tribute to him and Buck and Bakersfield. And
that's right, yeah.
He wrote the liner notes on that record.
Haggard did?
Uh-huh. And he was my number one. People say, who's your favorite artist of all time? I always say Merle.
We listened to so much. I was telling you about Chandler. We listened to so much Merle Haggard on our bus and before shows. Everybody's listening to everything else, and we were like, we might as well have a jukebox on our bus. The music we listen to all day, every day. Haggard, man.
It was unbelievable. I have, and tell me what you think. This is my own brain working, but I think the reason he wrote the songs the way he did is because he had his freedom taken away from him, and he was actually in prison. He's not just, talking about what it might have been like, but he actually experienced it.
How long was he in prison for?
I don't think a long time. And, and then you think about a song like, I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. Yeah. That's about as sad as it gets. Yeah. But then comes the hope. No one could steer me right, but Mama tried. Yeah. And that's what, to me, is what, if you lose hope, then you're done, Yeah. But even in the greatest of despair, if there's hope in there somewhere, it's kind of beautiful. You know, my song "Go Rest High on That Mountain" is as sad as it gets, but hope. It really is hopeful.
Go rest on a mountain. Yeah. 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 That's that song. But "That's the Way Love Goes" is probably my favorite Haggard song. That's my day. I daily listen to that one. Daily listen to that. "Misery and Gin," beautiful. Right. God.
Yeah, it was fun when me and Paul did that record. I was going, which song should I do? And we didn't do the obvious ones, really. I don't think, and it kind of made it fun, Yeah. We did what was suitable for some good guitar playing and some great steel playing, and away we went.
Steel guitar might be my favorite instrument.
It's mine by a mile.
Yeah, there's nothing like it.
I think it's because it emulates the human voice.
Yes.
As closely as anything can.
You can have a duet with a steel guitar. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. When I was, I watched every country music show that was on TV back when I was a kid. They weren't on when you were a kid, but they're in syndication or something.
I was watching reruns, but I was watching them.
They were live when I was there. But we watched Buck, we watched Porter, we watched everything there was, and I was just always infatuated with steel guitars. And then when I was 18, I'd moved to Louisville, Kentucky to play in a bluegrass band. As soon as I moved there, they wanted to make a record. So we came down here and made a record, and they got Buddy Emmons to play on it. And it was 1975, and he was absolutely torching it. He always did. But and it lit a fire in me that never went away. Yeah. I've always had to have that element of that instrument in my music. I loved it. Paul. Do you know Paul very well?
Yeah. I've gotten to over the last couple of years playing on my records.
I'll tell you a great story about Paul. This was 1989, and I was cutting "When I Call Your Name," and the steel guitar was not in great favor, probably in that era, and most people didn't want it on their records, and if they did, they wanted it to not sound like a steel guitar. Pad the string, do whatever, and Paul had played the solo on "When I Call Your Name," and I called him up and I said, "Hey man, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I could talk you into coming back down here and replaying that solo on "When I Call Your Name." And he said, "Well, I like what I played." And I said, "Well, I do too, but I said, I don't mean to offend, but I want the instrument to cry. I want the instrument to do what it always used to do to me." And he wasn't happy. And he came down and he just played one of those, those life-changing steel guitar solos. There's a handful of them in the history of this music. And the song went on to do what it did.
Oh, what a song.
He pulled me aside and he said, "I know I wasn't very nice to you when you asked me to replay that, but I'm really grateful that you asked me to replay it,
Special.
Yeah, it is. There's been a history, I think, in our music where we've run from it.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Yeah, and I'm very thankful that it's coming back a little bit right now.
Yeah.
I mean, God, if I got anything to do with it, there's still guitar soaked all over my record.
Yeah, baby.
So if there's one, I'm gonna do it. I just feel, and you know, to bring it back to the Opry and playing at the Opry, there's I got all kinds of songs across the board.
Sure.
But there are certain songs that I'll probably never play at the Opry because I want the Opry. There's when I'm cutting my record, and Paul will tell you too, we run it through an Opry filter. It's like, well, what is this going to sound like with the Opry band? And I think there needs to be steel guitar in those songs, and I got more fiddle on this next record than I've ever put in. I want country music to make people feel how I felt as a kid when I got addicted to it.
Well, that's the way it works, you know.
Yeah.
You turn people on to what you loved, and that's how history works. It's you know, you can't expect a kid your age to know all the history of this music, but if there's people in between that go, hey, if you like this, look at this, and then this and this, and then you go down those rabbit holes and find, you know, all these great musicians, all these great songs, and it's a blast, you know.
Yeah. What was the little round circle y'all used to? There's a great video of you and George. Was it Haggard too? What is that?
It was George had a TV show for a minute.
Okay.
And everybody sat around and
because I think y'all did He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Yeah, I was playing guitar.
That's
for
right.
him. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it was pretty magical.
The Grand Tour is another one of those songs that gets me every time. Is there a theory on that song? Do you have a theory on that song?
I don't know. All I know is
it's sad as shit. Is what I know.
It's I think Nora Wilson wrote that song.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, and I may be mistaken. I usually am, but I wrote a song that was all over it one time, and I got to listen to it, and I go, oh shoot, I wrote the Grand Tour with different lyrics. I called him up. Yeah. I called Nora up, and I said, dude, no ill intention there, but I think I'm all over your song. He goes, don't worry about it, kid.
Oh.
You know, it's pretty cool.
That's a good way to be about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man.
Step right up. I've heard myself sing that now on AI, and it's pretty creepy.
Oh, AI is funny, man.
It's a trip.
It is funny. Yeah, I never thought I'd hear Kanye West singing Flower Shops, but I have.
That's great. Oh, man. Well, you know, the Opry has a million great songwriters that have come through those ranks, and I like to play. It's always a delicate balance, you know, because you want to, you know, Roy Acuff always used to say, you better sing the one that brung you here, son. You know, you're better, and so you always want to sing something that's familiar to people, because a lot of times it's people's first experience as an audience member to see the Opry. But the reason I do it, I play new songs out there all the time, maybe a couple of new ones and a couple of old ones, and everybody walks away happy. But when I first played the Opry, like I told you back when my kid was little and they invited me and I couldn't make it, and finally did. Well, When I Call Your Name was a new song, and it hadn't been recorded yet, and that's the first song I played.
That's incredible.
On the Opry, you know. So it's got a history of good luck,
I'd say,
to me, you know.
I was born at the Opry.
Yeah. And so I've always felt like it was a neat place, and I have it. I like you. I'm respectful of. I don't ever play electric out there very much because it's not conducive the way the band sets up and the way it sounds out there, where it's very satisfying. So I always play more acoustic and play more traditional driven and let Tommy shine and all of that. So how about you?
Yeah.
Do you play new songs out there?
I probably will. I mean, I've played it 3 times, and I've played the ones that brought me there. But I will say, in the story of Flower Shops, the first time I ever played that was at the Ryman it was like Whiskey Jam 10-year reunion or something like that, or anniversary, and that song hadn't been out. I hadn't even recorded that song yet, and I just knew it was my first time playing the Ryman stage, and I was like, think I have to play this song, just me and my guitar.
Yep.
And that feeling inside of me, and I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
My label was like, "Why don't you play one that's out?" I'm like, because it's not going to be the same at the Ryman. I'm playing at the Ryman. I'm going to play a country song on an acoustic guitar, and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
But I think that songwriting, and has it affected? It has 100% affected my songwriting in that I run it through that filter in my head. I can hear what it would sound like at the Opry. And one of my favorite compliments is when the Opry band's fired up about, like,
Exactly.
when they're like, man,
that's a
this
nice
stuff's
song.
cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's like, the Opry band compliment gets me fired up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because those guys,
They hear it all.
They hear it all. Mm-hmm. And when they decided they're going to be in the Opry band, they probably want to play country songs, you know?
Exactly.
And it's cool that when they're fired up to play something that you like, we all agree.
Yeah, there's a long history out there of a lot of artists bringing their own bands out there. And I never did that much. I always wanted to use those guys, you know? And even, gosh, all those years ago, 30, 35 years ago, guys like Buddy Harman were still around and playing, and if you'd never played a shuffle with Buddy Harman, he's kind of the guy that invented the groove,
right?
You know, and so that was always, I knew if Buddy was there and the band was there, I was going to play a shuffle. Yeah. You know, because I knew how great it was going to feel. So, and I like the upright bass more than electric bass on the Opry, because it sounds great on the radio.
Yes.
You know, I'm always thinking about how it's going to sound on the radio.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right though.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think that a lot of people don't want to use a house band because they have their band that they tour with. They really know their stuff, but
my guys might get the boot next time I play the Opry, because I always have Grady on the drums, and I let Chandler play steel, and then I have a guitar player, and the rest is Opry band. But sorry guys, I might go full bred Opry band next time.
It's kind of fun, but it's also, you know, that's how they get paid.
Yeah.
Is by the spot out there.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't get to play on the show, they don't make any money. So I'm always thinking about them.
That's a great point.
As far as that, and a lot of people would bring their touring band, and they didn't even really tour that much.
Yeah.
You know, and they'd have them out there, and it would always cut the staff band guys out of a chance to get paid for a spot and this and that. So I always ask them, so what, you guys want to go home tonight, or do you want to play? And sometimes they'll say, we're tired.
Yeah.
Can you handle it? Yeah, I'll just be in the guitar and whatever. But yeah.
How many times you reckon you've played the Opry?
I don't know.
Ain't no telling.
I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
I don't think I counted it back then.
Yeah.
You know, I always showed up. You know, I was grateful that they asked me to be a member 30-something years ago. And you know, with all honesty, what I've noticed is my generation of the artists that have been made members are pretty scarce. They don't show up a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think it's my place. You know, I remember Acuff told me one time, I was in his dressing room, and he says, you know, back when I was really hot and I was killing it and all that, he said, they came to me, Hollywood came and wanted me to make motion pictures, and I don't know if it was cowboy movies or whatever, but because he was so famous, you know. Mm-hmm. And he said, I told him no. I said I knew the Opry needed me. God. And he turned it all that down, and he was a staple. Jamie
Johnson had me backstage when I was there last time, and he said something I'll never forget. He was like, we do the Grand Ole Opry because it's not what they're gonna do for us. It's what we can do for the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, dude. And you get more out of that than anything. Knowing that you're a part of this long line of rope, and you get to put your own little knot in it. That's you know, pray ye. I would love to one day be a member of the Grand Ole Opry. That, you know, everything, childhood me, all the support my parents showed me by just getting me instruments. They weren't musically inclined at all, but they took me to shows. They got me instruments, and
not many things can say they've lasted 100 years, and they can.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The another great Opry moment that blew my mind was Dillon asked me to come sing. We have a song together on my record, and he was like, Ernest, I'd like you to come sing this song with me. I'm doing that. He goes, they've been asking me to do it for years, and I'm said yes, but I want you to come sing this song. And I was like, okay, no problem. Hell yes, I'll be there, right? And I go in the green room, and Jesse Joe, the whole family's in there, and I was like, I guess it is a big deal. Dean's doing the Opry. He goes, this is my debut. I was like, this is your Grand Ole Opry debut? He's like, I've played this stage one other time in my life doing like a George Jones or Hank Williams tribute like 40 years ago. And
he's something, ain't he?
He played, what did he play? He said, he had Bill Anderson come out, and I'd done a lot of things different.
Yeah.
Then Dean played The Chair.
Yep.
And then I came out and played a song nobody knew with Dean Dillon for his third song.
That's
like,
great.
What? Couldn't we have done that one first? And then
he's such a hoot.
He is something else.
I've gotten to write a few songs with Dean over the years, and we've written this song, it's been 15 years ago now, whatever. And it was this really beautiful story song about it's called Whippoorwill River. It was about him and his dad used to go fishing on this Whippoorwill River, and then his son had a son, and the granddad takes him fishing down the and we used to go, might ride in my granddad's canoe, and it's just this beautiful, beautiful song, and like only Dean could be a part of. We finished it, and I asked Dean, I said, was your life anything like this? He said, oh, hell, I didn't even meet my dad till I was 38 years old.
And see, back to this storytelling, you can make up a whole thing. Fall in love, and man, this guy and his dad had a better relationship than any father-son I ever knew in my life. He's like, I didn't meet him till
I didn't meet my dad till I was 38 years old. I had this other song I'd written with him. It was called A Letter to My Mama. And we had a title, something else, and we wrote it 30 years ago, and my sweet friend Dawn Sears heard that song. She goes, why have you not recorded that song for your mother? I said, I don't know, just never made it on a record or fit or whatever. And she goes, well, promise me you'll record that song someday. She passed away. Dawn did. And so the next record I made, I said, I got to do that song for my mama. My mom's the same age as the Opry. She was born in the fall of 1925. So there's another reason there's a really neat, deep connection, And so I recorded it, and I changed the name from whatever we had it called before, and we changed it to A Letter to My Mama. And I called Dean. I said, hey, man, I'm going to record that song we wrote 30 years ago. Do you care if I change the name? He goes, I don't even remember that we wrote that song. You change whatever you want.
Dude, the family element of the Opry is really cool. And, I've gotten to meet you and talk to you through that too.
And, it is what I treasure it more than having hit songs and being out there and all of that. It's really the people I've met, the friends I've made, and it's awesome. People, until they go out there and experience, like I told you earlier, so many artists of my generation that don't go out there and play, you have no idea what you're missing. The people you're going to meet, and just the best.
And the fans, like you're saying, it's a lot of people's first experience, and that we're so used to going out and having rowdy crowds standing up and singing every word to the songs loud, and they're really there watching a show and taking it in, and it's a total different environment. If you go out there thinking it's going to be like going and playing
your regular place.
Bonnaroo, exactly. It's just not.
I know, because to me, it's the only place you can go and see maybe 60 years of musical history in one night. Most people go to a concert and they see one or two people. With them, there's 12, 15 acts on
Ghost Riders in the Sky, and all the way down to somebody's brand new debut.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Somebody's been there 60 years and somebody's been there 6 hours. It's great.
Yeah.
He's written more hit songs than I have.
Wrong. Big wrong. Wrong. Yeah, tell me something I don't know, please. Please tell me something I need to know.
Not sure I can.
Sing better. I definitely sing. Man, I don't know. You could, though. I think you already did. It's a good thing to remember when writing songs. Minimal, and say as much as you can without saying too much is great advice.
Yeah, that's what Guy Clark taught me. He said if the word that you're using doesn't add to telling the story, he said it doesn't belong.
Yeah.
you know, and being a musician and being a singer, I mean, you have to understand, I write songs also from a musician's perspective and a singer's perspective, in that sometimes certain words won't sing good.
Correct.
You know, and I need one less syllable. I need 3 more syllables. It's all about finding the words that
Feel the best.
Feel right with the melody and all of that. And which word are you going to lean on to sing? And man, I've got a really interesting history with songwriting in my own head and in my own heart, because for such a long time that was the knock on me, was I couldn't write songs.
Really?
Oh yeah. And you know, those early 80s years, I struggled to ever have a hit, you know. And I wanted to be a songwriter. You know, my heroes were songwriters. And I wanted to be an artist that wrote his own songs. And that was the last thing that showed up for me, was writing songs. And, you know, I think my singing and my playing always kind of overshadowed my songs. And so there was even a period where I was told by my record company that I couldn't record my own songs. And that was pretty crushing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know? And so I've always had enough of that to keep me in a place where you don't think you're Roger Miller, don't think you're, you know,
right,
Bill Anderson or whatever. And I just kept at it. And little by little they got better. And I think they got better because of my willingness to be patient.
Sure. And
my willingness to edit myself. When you're young, it's really hard to edit yourself. I remember I was playing on a session, you know, and that's what I aspire to be, a session musician, play on people's records, sing harmony on records. And that's what I wound up doing. I've worked on well over 1,000 artists' records in my 45, 50 years of doing this.
I want you to play on my records.
Right.
Play some stuff on my record, please.
All right, I'll play steel. You know, I was a steel player.
Really? Vince Gill playing steel.
That was horrible.
Vince Steel, dude.
We sold it and we called it a mercy selling.
Okay.
So it wasn't any good. But, you know, I think, and here's what's beautiful, you know, that keeps me going, is my songs are better today than they ever were over the last 40 plus years. And you don't see it on the way up. But what's going to happen down the road is, you know, maybe the world won't notice. Maybe you won't have hits anymore. Maybe you won't ring the bell like you are in your hot stretch and all that. But if you know it's better, then that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Amen. That's great. Yeah, and God, I feel like where I'm at right now, I'm in a do not get complacent just because it's a hot streak right now, and I don't think I'll ever be able to stop right. It's not like I turn it on, turn it off. I get dry. I don't write for a few weeks at a time. Sure. I think a good idea is like an egg toss, right? You gotta let it. You can't go out and just try to make it happen. And the editing, the self edits is hard to do. I think in this day and time, with how quick turnarounds are with demos and all, you know, you write with the track guy, get it down, turn it in, on to the next one, and people like to forget it ever happened tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the state of the world, is the information is massive coming at you. You didn't have to wait. You didn't have to wait 2 years for your next artist famous best record. Yeah. And you were always anxious and willing to get to take in new stuff, you know. And there wasn't as much of it. The information age is mind-numbing to me, you know. But I just think that what I had going for me was the realization that even in those years that I struggled and I wasn't having hits, and I wasn't discouraged, you know. And even when I go back, I told you about how they didn't want me to record my songs. If I'm honest with myself and I go look at those songs, I go, I don't blame them. Sure. They were right, you know, and that's fair. And so sometimes criticism can be beneficial. Sure. You know, I remember first record I ever made was, a producer was a guy named Emery Gordy, who's married to Patty Loveless, and a great player, and played with Elvis, and played with Rodney and me and Roseanne. All of us, we were great mates. And I'm in there singing this really traditional country song, and he hits the talk back, and he goes, dude, let me tell you something. He said, we already have a George Jones. He said, and you're not him.
Yeah. Were you doing your best George?
I just was singing like licks. And
yeah.
he says, dude, you just got to sing like you.
Yeah.
He says, it's the only way you're going to ever.
Well, that worked.
Yeah, it did. But that's the great thing if you're not too headstrong and whatever to
be coachable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.